We're doing rear brakes a bit early. Customer brought his own parts. I'm not going to argue with that. It's always good it's always better to be on the safe side than end up not having brakes while you're on your trip. When you have a big boat on your hoist, I find it difficult, especially with lack of room here, getting at stuff. I can't remember if the disc is able to come off with the bracket in place. Let's find out together. Oh, bracket has to come off. $18. It's a good idea. It's a good idea to replace the brake pad tin, the hardware. Sometimes it comes with pads, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, I have to reuse it. If you don't have a wire wheel, you can use a flat file. Just want to make sure that they move nice and freely. When you get some air trapped in there, just use some pliers until the pin bottoms all the way out, and that usually forces the air up to the top. And a bit of grease out, no big deal. That one was already bottoming out. A little bit to go. Same as the front discs, give them a bit of a cleaning with brake clean. Any stubborn grease, you use a bit of sandpaper. Now is also a good time to check the wheel bearing. Just spin it and listen for any kind of growling noises. Once you get to know your gun over the years of usage, you can see different settings here. Reverse is usually only one setting. Some guns you can adjust the volume of airflow in either direction. This one here, you've got 3 detents, so that's maximum, medium, and little. So over the years you get to know how tight fasteners get at various settings. Just like on the front, it's not really needed, but I like to lube stuff up. For the smart guys, I know the bottom half doesn't even make contact, so why am I putting it there? It makes me feel better. Same for the other pad. The inner pad is usually the one that has the wear sensor. The piston needs to be turned in on these models. As with all the other ones, check the boots, make sure they're not broken. You can check underneath the boot for signs of rusting. If it takes excessive pressure to turn the piston back in, something's wrong. Make sure to look at your hoses, that they're not cracking, not forming bubbles. I turn the piston in until it bottoms out, and then I place it over the pads, and I turn the piston back out if there's too much free play. And also, while it's going in, you got to let the air out, so you got to lift the boot to let the air out. Okay, that's bottomed out now. And sometimes you get stuck. At this point, you place the pads and make sure that they move nice and freely, which they do. These brackets are at an angle, so you got to hold the pads, otherwise they're going to slide out. Ah, come on. And when you position the caliper, make sure that the springs for those pads are sitting correctly. Make sure that the wear sensor doesn't get pinched. And this is where I usually check for free play here. There's just a little bit, which is good. So I just snug it up, and then I move the caliper, and you can see that little bit of movement. It's just about right. A little bit less would be better, but that's all right. It just ensures that there's good pedal feel afterwards when you step on the brakes and when you use the handbrake. So you just hook in one side and you just move the other side with a screwdriver a little bit, and that pops right into place. And just like on the front, you got to make sure that this thing is able to move. If it doesn't move correctly, the wires can break. Make sure the connectors are clean. Make sure that it clicks together. It was a faint click, but it clicked. So I got ahead of myself. This wear sensor bracket still needs to be mounted. Come on. Yeah, it should be good. So that needs to go here still. I'm sure some of you guys caught that earlier. Make sure that the cable is free, the parking brake cable. Make sure the boot is sitting correctly. Otherwise you're going to get water intrusion and it's going to rust out the cable, and it'll freeze in the wintertime. And the retaining clip. And then do the same thing to the other side, and then you're done. Unless you want to bleed the system, I've got a generic brake bleeding video. I'll link in the description. Farvergnügen. That's the wrong accent.